Right, so what we're going to do right now is we are going to talk about warping in Ableton Live. It's very similar to how you do Elastic Audio in Pro Tools. So I'm going to be making comparisons between Live and Pro Tools and also Live and Logic and showing how all this stuff works together. Hopefully you don't have too many troubles with it. I don't think you will. It's basically the same thing. It's just, again, where do you locate stuff? And I find that in the beginning, Live is maybe a little bit easier to kind of locate things, but Pro Tools, as I got more used to it, I actually like the way Pro Tools does it a little bit more. But I remember in the beginning when I was first using, I'd been using Ableton Live for a long time before Pro Tools actually introduced Elastic Audio. I'd been using Ableton Live with warping for like, I don't know, 7 years, 8 years, something like that, because Pro Tools didn't get Elastic Audio until like 2008 or something. And by the time they did it, I was so used to Live that it was hard for me to make that transition over to Pro Tools the way they did it, because it's quite different. But then once I did get used to it in Pro Tools, I was like, oh, I actually like this a lot. So we're going to talk about that here right now. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to get rid of all this tracks except for this kick drum that's in here, and we are going to add a new audio track in, and let's grab a loop. So I'm going to go over here to my sample phonics libraries and go to this Bongo Tech one, and I'm going to grab one that's not too busy. Okay, these are all pretty much the same tempo here, so let's go down here. Maybe some of these are fills. These are all pretty much the same loops. Okay, so they're just slower. All right, so we'll go here to these loops here, grab this one here, and I'm just going to drag it in here. All right, so we've got all of our, here's our loop. I'm just going to go ahead and just have one bar of loop. And we're going to notice immediately that this one right here is off. It's a little bit before the line. This is a perfect time to use Elastic Audio, because basically what Elastic Audio allows us to do is it allows us to edit the rhythm that's going on in here. So in order to do this, we need to kind of see a couple things. First of all, the transients, remember the transients in Pro Tools, right? Well, we have transients in Ableton Live as well, and these transients are denoted where Ableton Live sees the transients is denoted by these little triangles that are up here. These little triangles here are showing me where Ableton Live sees the transients, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to this last one, and I'm just going to go in here, and we can see there's a weird little transient stray line over here on the right-hand side. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to just grab this one, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to double-click it. So I put a warp marker in there, and I'm just going to drag it and move it over. Boom. So now that lines up right there. Now, the other thing I need to do, though, is I want to go in, and I want to look at all these other ones in here and see if they kind of make sense with, whoops, wait, sorry. That was not what I wanted to do. There we go. I want to see if they make sense with things. I want to see if they make sense with the grid that's in here. So I'm going to set my grid to 16th notes and keep it at 16th notes. Stop it. Okay. So now whenever I zoom in, it'll be 16th notes. We can see some of these are on, some of them are off. So I can just go through and I can just move these so they're on, just to make it like be perfectly in time. Now, this is not something I would like actually do in real life. I'm just doing this to show you how you can do it. It's really easy. Once you've got one warp marker in there, it's actually really easy. Just click and drag and move them onto the grid like this. And you can see here's one there. It's like really slight. So now, let's listen to it. Okay, we can hear that. Let's go back. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to drag this one down. I'm going to call this one Bongo free. And I'm going to take out the warps in this. The way you can take out warps is you just click on one and you hit Command A to highlight everything, and you hit delete, and it gets rid of all your warp markers. Okay, and I'm just going to drag this last one here. Actually, hold on, let's do this. Let's here, move this one out of the way. Boom, there we go. I'm going to keep this last one in over here on the right hand side. Otherwise, Ableton Live gets confused about what the tempo is. Now let's listen to this one. This is what it sounded like originally. And this is what it sounds like now. Let's listen to this one. You can hear it gets a little bit weird towards the end. He's like rushing the end right here. Whereas this one here, it's straight on right here at the end. This one. And this one here. All right, you can hear it's a little bit weird at the end of this one here. He's rushing. Okay. What's happening though is this first little beat is like actually on top of things. So I really do like fixing this one would be in my best interest. And the way I do that is I just click it and I just move it over. So I can see that Ableton Live sees the transient right here. That transient's fine. And I just click and drag it. When I drag it, it gives me a warp marker here. Now these warp markers are the same as the warp markers in Pro Tools. Nothing is actually different except for how we deal with things is a little bit different. In Pro Tools, if you remember, Pro Tools has the analysis mode and it's got the warp view, I should say view. It's got the analysis view and it's got the warp view. The analysis view is where you deal with all of these transients. You can move the transients around and stuff like that. And then warp view is where you actually move the audio. If you have done the warping assignment in Pro Tools, which most of y'all have done, then you'll know what I'm talking about. If you haven't done it, you definitely need to go back and do it because it's important to learn how to do this stuff. The warping is very, very important in any DAW that you're using. So I encourage you to go back and do that assignment if you haven't done it. But really, you do want to learn how to do warping. It's really, really going to be useful in your life as a producer. So with this one here, go back, we don't have any warp markers. We got one warp marker in the beginning, and we've got one warp marker at the end over here. These are ones that were put in by Ableton. It's by Live, by the program. I didn't put those in. They came with it. And this one here is a little bit early, so I just want to take this one and move it so it's right on that too. So I'm just going to click and drag it to the right, and it moves everything around. Now, everything else did move around because I don't have any other warp markers in, so the one on the end and the one on the end over here, the beginning and the end, those stayed in place. Because remember, warp markers are like anchor points. So they anchor the audio into that part of the grid, and it doesn't move until you move it. Okay? So what do I mean by that? Let's take a look at this one here. I'm just going to go over here. I'm going to turn the grid off. So now my grid is off, and I'm just going to click and drag this one. You can see once I drag it, it gets a warp marker here, and I move it around like this. Look at that. The stuff on the right-hand side does not move. The stuff on the left-hand side does move. The reason why is because these two warp markers right here on the left and the right are keeping it locked in place. If I go over here on the right and I move one, it's going to move everything on the right, but it's not going to move anything on the left. Okay? So if I listen to this, let's here, just move this over like this. Let's listen to this. Right? If I move it this way, right? If I put it back where it was, and move it over this way. Right? Everything before that point is super fast. Everything after it is super slow because I'm essentially adjusting the timing of that clip. So it's going to speed things up and slow things down. And here's the cool part is that it's adjusting the timing of the clip without changing the pitch. And this is the big deal. Remember, with elastic audio and warping, any of these, flex time if you're in Logic, these are basically breaking physics and they're disconnecting the pitch from the time. Okay? if I want to hear what it would sound like with physics involved, I'm going to put it in repitch mode. And I'm going to move this. Everything that's fast is going to be, everything that's faster is going to be a higher pitch. Everything that's slower is going to be a lower pitch, because that's how physics works. Okay, it's not a special effect. It's actually just physics involved. Okay, but I'm going to put it back here in beats mode, and we listen to it again. Okay, I'm going to speed it up and slow it down. No, you could do this in Pro Tools. We did this in Pro Tools. You can't do it like this in Pro Tools exactly. It takes a second for it to lock in, but we totally did this. No, we did this in Pro Tools. You were there. You turned in the assignment. That was that Elastic Audio assignment, where you had to change the timing of your counting. Remember that? You were counting and you moved the timing to make it fit perfectly with the metronome. That was the assignment. So, is it still on time? I don't know what you mean by that. Is it still on time? I mean, this early stuff here is way off time. It's because I'm dragging it all over the place. The timing is completely off. If we go to put this kick drum back in here, it's all over the place. So it's not on time, right? But if I put it back to where it was originally, because the timing was not that far off on this, so I'm messing with it just to show you all this. Right? But I can use this to go in here and I can adjust individual ones, but I just got to remember that if I don't lock the either side in, it's going to make a mess of the timing. So I got to make sure I double click over here, and now I can move this one around right here. Okay, so that's what happens there. Now, the thing is, I've got this set, my warp mode is set up to a certain setting, and that's what you're getting. You're hearing like the reverse sounds and stuff. If I don't want to hear that, I can change this down here. There we go. But Scooby, I think you're Ernesto, right? Yeah. So you could do this in Logic. You can do this in Pro Tools. You can do it in Ableton Live. You could probably do this in FL Studio, I guess. Everybody pretty much can do this these days. They do them all a little bit differently. Logic is closer to how Ableton Live does it, I think. I don't think there's a different view, but Pro Tools has a different view. So I'm not talking about the ability of the programs to do it. I'm talking about how they actually do it is slightly different. But it's not that different. It's just a little bit different. Like Pro Tools, you just have an extra screen. These little gray dots just show up on the they just show up on the analysis window in Pro Tools, and these yellow dots show up in the warp window in Pro Tools. But here in Ableton Live, they're in the same window. So let's say, for example, that I wanted to move this transient to a different location. Well, the way I do that to move my transients in Ableton Live is I hold down the Shift key. Let me just zoom in. Hold down Shift, and now I can move the transient around like that. This is going to be super, super useful. For example, when you're working with a lot of audio loops, and the audio loops are not quite lining up how you want them to be, then you can use that Shift to go in and mess with the timing of stuff. Not the timing, but just move the transients around. And it's really important that you do mess with your transients and make them line up really well because of how different warp modes work, and we're going to talk about that here in just a moment. But once I've got this in, actually, one of the coolest things with Elastic Audio and any Elastic Audio or warping or whatever it is in any DAW is that now, once you've got all these points put in, you can hit Command U for quantize, and it will quantize these to my grid. Oops. Oh, let's move this back to where it was. There we go. Now it just made my timing perfect. Okay. Oh yeah, the shift thing is dope, and it's something that a lot of people actually don't know about. Yep. There's a lot of I know a lot of actually really high-level users who don't know about shift. So that's pretty cool. Now, let's go back. Let me back this up a little bit. Let's put this one back as well. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and take out these warp markers here. Take all these out. Move you as well. There we go. Okay. And we're going to go down here and grab, I'm going to make a copy of this. Warp 2. And here's another cool little trick that some people know about, some people don't know about. If I just want to move this one right here in the middle, this 1.3, I can hold down my Command key, and you'll notice that when I mouse over the transient, it puts little ghost warp markers on either side. This is so that when I move this one, it's not actually going to, it's not going to move those others. It's going to immediately put a warp marker on those two on either side, and it will keep them how they are, like that. So let's do that. Let's just show that one more time. As long as I have warp markers, as long as I have transient markers on all my transients in the correct places, then all I have to do is mouse over the one I want to move. I don't have to put in a warp marker on this side and this side like that, and then move this. I don't have to do that. What I do is I just hold down my Command key and drag that and move that around. And now that makes it super, super useful there. So that's a really cool feature as well that some people know about, some people don't know about there. Barb, wait, how come you don't know about that? We've definitely talked about this here before. But anyway, I'm glad I can help out. But I'm surprised that you don't know. So no, the command click. Oh wait, hold on. The command click. No, the command click does move it on the grid. I'm turning my grid off. Just to kind of be able to move it to show you. I'm just showing you with the grid turned off. That's why. I'm just because it makes it easier to see when I'm moving it smoothly. But yeah, turning the grid on and off is Command 4 to turn that grid on and off. If you yeah, so that's holding down Command and it just moves it right there. So you can see I'm just locking it to the grid right there. There you go, boom, like that. There we go. So there's that. Now another cool feature with this stuff is, let's say that I've got some warp markers in here and I don't want those warp markers to be there. I want to get rid of them. I can highlight this and hit delete and it will delete those warp markers. So you can highlight that. You can also click over here and hold shift and highlight this and hit delete and you can get rid of it, okay? So, so that's another good thing to keep in mind. This is something that I really recommend when you're doing warping for tracks. If you drag a whole track in here, which I'm going to show you in just a second, if you drag a whole track in here and you drag it in and it puts a whole bunch of warp markers in, but you don't want those warp markers to be in there, what I recommend that you do is you click in here, you hit Command A, and it highlights everything, and you hit delete, and it will delete all of your warp markers except for the very first warp marker. So that's a really good little thing right there too to keep in mind. It's a little bit more advanced though, because you kind of, like, this is all stuff that I'm showing you that I didn't discover or I didn't start really utilizing until I had been using Live for years and years and years. So it's not like, it becomes like, Barb, I'm not surprised maybe that you had kind of forgotten about this, because there's so much to learn here that when you're learning it the first time around, you miss it because you're focused on other stuff. So, and this is the cool thing about like reviewing stuff over and over and over again and watching these videos repeatedly, or just being here like you are, which is awesome, is that I'm going to say the same thing like 5 times. As you become more advanced, you'll start to see the usefulness of these things. So that's really cool there. The other thing you can do is just highlight a section of it and highlight this and hit Command U, and it will quantize it to the beat there. So now this one here is nice and warped for me, but not everything has warp markers all over it. So that's the basics of warp markers and transients. So the transients are the little gray dots, and you can see here's my little gray dots. If I zoom in, they look like triangles, and the warp markers are the yellow ones. And the warp markers actually lock the audio into place, and the gray ones do not lock the audio. They're just showing you stuff. Okay, so that's the basics of this. Now let's go here and take a look at the at the notes here. So a couple things. To insert a transient marker, the gray ones, that's Command-Shift-I. So if I want to put a transient marker into this like empty space right here for whatever reason, I want to put one right there, I just highlight where I want to put it, Command-Shift-I, and it puts it there. So now I've got a transient marker right there. If I want to delete it, I can click on it and hit delete. That's easy. If I want to put a warp marker right there, I just highlight it, I just click where I want to put it, and I hit Command-I, and it puts a warp marker there. I usually, depending on what I'm doing, I do different things. Sometimes I put warp markers, sometimes I put transients. It really depends on what I'm doing. It's a case-by-case thing that really you need to get to the point where you are actively using the stuff where you can make decisions about which one to use when. Talking about it right now isn't really going to help a lot because everything is so new. You can move your cursor, your playhead left or right by the transient by holding down Option and hitting the arrows. So for example, if let's go up here to my free one, and I'm like right there, I can hold Option and use my left and right arrows, and it will move forward and backwards by the transients, which is super cool. Now this actually gets really cool if we're in the arrangement view over here. Whoops, sorry, not that, like right there. And I've got this, let me zoom in. I'm gonna make this window a bit bigger, like this. And if I click on this first one here, if I hold Option, no wait, hold on, I have to be down here. If I hold Option, it moves by the transient up top as well. But it's not moving my playhead, it's just kind of showing me where things are. I thought maybe a little bit different, but I guess not, which is kind of annoying. No. Okay, if I'm holding down Option, it's just moving to the end of my clip, which is okay. But no, don't do that. No, don't do that. Stop that. Yeah, I wanted to move by that. Yeah, so it's still not. There's still some things that Pro Tools does in the edit window that are super cool that Ableton Live doesn't do, especially in terms of these transient things here. Because what I would love to be able to do is actually chop this up by the transients in this window here, but it's not. It still doesn't allow you to do that. You do have slice to MIDI track, which is kinda ish, but it's not what I'm talking about here. And over here in the edit window, they still haven't added it in. So yeah, I mean, this is stuff that's probably going to come in Ableton Live. Really, what they need to have is they need to get somebody who's like a Pro Tools expert to come into Ableton and add in all these cool features and stuff in here that Pro Tools has that Ableton Live still doesn't have. Like Pro Tools has an ability to go in here and go to Edit and go to Split by the transients. So you can just go in here and you go to Split by transients, and it splits up your clip in here in the edit window by each transient, which would be really cool if I could just grab this drum right here and just split it out and still have it as audio, but not have it be in a MIDI, which you can do in Ableton Live, but it's like 10 steps to do it, and it's not nearly as easy as doing it in Pro Tools. But down here, if I want to move things by my if I want to move forward and backwards by my clips, by my transients, I can do it down here. And you can see it's moving things up top as well, but it's not going to allow me to Command E to split it, so I can't split it up, which is kind of annoying. Yeah, that's super annoying actually. All right, anyway, let's keep going here. Let's not focus on what it can't do. Let's focus on what it can do. Let's see here. Create a warp marker there, lock and move the warp marker, hold Command and click. That's good. Oh yeah, telescoping. Telescoping is this thing that a lot of people don't really understand, I guess. I don't know. It only works if there's no more warp markers to the left or the right. So what this does is I only have a warp marker here on the left-hand side of my clip over here, nothing on the right-hand side. And if I grab one of these, I'm going to turn into slip mode here, turn my grid off. If I grab it, everything moves like a telescope. Now if we listen to this, it's just a big mess. And if I put in like a warp marker here, drag it over Drag it over just a little bit. There we go. Now, this stuff in here is not going to telescope the same way, but this over here will telescope the same way. There we go. So if I wanted to, I could grab the end like this, but I could also just grab this one and drag it over. Now, you might be wondering, when does this actually become useful? And the answer is, it becomes useful when it becomes useful. There are definitely times in my life when I use this telescoping mode a lot for certain things that I'm doing, but it's not. It's like nice to have, but it's not the end of the world if I don't use it. For example, if I get here to the end of this fourth bar over here, and I wanted this last bar to be halftime, I could just easily grab this and drag it over, and now that's about halftime. So if we listen to it, let's go ahead and make let's make this into a 4-bar loop. Check this out. Boom. So you can see it does it really fast there at the end. But it's still in time. I could take this and drag it over like that, so it's like a third. Like that. So you can do some cool things with this. Here, let's put this back like that. Let's move this one over. But how often you're going to use it, the answer is probably not that often. Here, let's move this one over like this. There we go. Let's do that. Yeah, so you can hear a little bit easier. How often are you going to use it? I don't know. It's something that I do find myself, like, I'm glad that I know about it. I'm glad I know how to use it, but it's not something that I use all the time. And again, it's a very advanced, like, I would say, would I say advanced? I don't know if I would say call it an advanced feature. I would call it like an esoteric feature. That's telescoping. That's this right here. Moving a transient, hold shift and move the transient. Yes, good. Okay, cool. Oh, here's something in the arrangement view, which is pretty cool. If I grab, let's grab this one, warped one here. Let's get rid of you. We don't need you. Let's grab this warped one here. And I'm going to stick it over here into my arrangement view like this. And let's say I've got this one going, I've got my bass drum going. And let's just loop these out for a bit. Let's live 4-bar loop, a 9-bar loop there. And let's grab a drum sound. Drums. And I'm going to put a cymbal smash in here. Okay, let's say I like this one here. Let's say, oh, that's a pretty cool little sound. So I want to take that and I want to throw it in here. So I grab it, I drag it down here, and there it is. There's my cymbal smash. Cool. Okay, now I want the cymbal smash to happen on every 2 bars. Let's say, like that. Great. Cool, sounds good, okay? But it's too long. I want this to be a shorter cymbal smash, okay? So what I can do is, as long as my warp is turned on, I hold down the shift key and I can make it shorter. Not like that, hold on, that is the wrong thing. There we go, hold down shift key, there we go. Cool, so now you can hear it's the same cymbal smash, but it's faster. This is different from grabbing the end of it. Here, let's do this. Duplicate that. Let's listen to this one here. Hold down shift, drag it over like that. And it's different from doing it like this and like doing it like that. Here, let's listen to this one. Hear how different they sound? Let's listen to it as a loop. Okay. They're both the same length, but now they sound very different, right? Because this one, I just trimmed it over and used it. Now, let's go ahead and what we'll do is I'll grab it and make it longer by holding down shift and dragging it to the right. There we go. Okay, so you can hear it sounds even more different here. Let's get a warp mode that works a little bit better maybe. Just changing up the warp mode as we go here. Yeah. Yeah, it's okay. Repitch mode. Yeah, I mean the complex is probably the best one. If we put these back in, you're not going to notice it that much. Okay, so this is really good for if you want to make something happen, like just like be a little bit longer or something like that, for the end of like a vocal line, or if you want to make it shorter or whatever, hold down the shift key and grab the end of it, and it changes it a lot. This, when I learned about this one, I was really, really happy when they did this, because there are a lot of times, especially when you're working with vocals and stuff like that, that you will want to shorten or lengthen your audio, but you don't want to have to go digging around down here to do it. You just want to grab it up here and make it shorter or longer with the warping turned on. So that's the shift key does that. Okay, so that's that. And then moving the audio within the clip, it's you hold Option and Shift and drag the audio in the bottom half of the clip. So if we go up here to our bongo, let's go to our bongo and do this. You stop playing. Okay, so I've got this. Now it's a 1 beat loop. What I can do is if I hold down my Command and Option key down here and I drag, wait, no, they changed it, didn't they? It's Option and Shift now. Sorry, that the notes are wrong. Oh no, the notes are right. My brain. If I hold down Option and Shift and I move this around, watch what happens here. Let's check this out. I'm gonna make this bigger. And you can see down here in the bottom it's gonna happen as well. I drag this and it moves my actual, it actually moves the interior of the clip. So it's dragging it's dragging this around. Now you can get the same thing by moving this around. But you can also drag it around up here. So that's a really cool thing too that I think a lot of people don't really know about. I don't really see many people using that. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's really neat. Let me put this back over here like that. There we go. Cool. So that's Option Shift in the arrangement view. It's like warping stuff that happens only in the arrangement view. Okay. So cool. All right. Now let's get into the details of these warp modes. Just like Pro Tools, there are several different warp modes. These change the algorithm of how Ableton Live actually approaches warping. The algorithm is the math behind everything, right? So the math changes and it's more suited for different types of music. There are 5 different warp modes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different warp modes: beats, tones, textures, repitch, complex, and complex pro. Some of these are connected together. For example, tones and textures are similar, complex and complex pro are similar. But I really recommend that you learn. You don't have to get you don't have to be able to write a huge paper about these, but I do recommend that you understand beats mode and also complex and complex pro. They all have their uses. I do find myself using all of them in a lot of songs, but tones and textures are probably the ones that I use the least. Also repitch, I don't really use that much because it changes the pitch of things. But beats mode I use all the time, and complex pro I use all the time as well. So beats mode is pretty self-explanatory. It's basically just for beats. So here we've got this bongo thing, and there we go. Let me get rid of this. I don't need that crash. And the bongo is a beat, so it makes sense. Oh, what would you use for the bongo? You'd use a beat for the bongo. You'd use beats mode for the bongo. So here we go. Down here is where we can change this. Let me just put this in a way that looks more familiar. We go over here and we can change this here using beats. Here's the beats mode, the warp. Here's the warp on. Here's warp off. Wait. Cancel. Sorry. There we go. Here's warp off. and warp on. Sorry, warp on. And here's where we can choose the different modes. We're going to keep it in beats mode. And beats mode is great for things like bongos. It's really, really good for this. Let's go over here and find some different stuff. Let's go ahead and slow this down to 100 BPMs. And let's go ahead and change the different warp mode just to hear what it sounds like. So 100 BPMs is 20 tempo ticks slower than what we started out. And so what this is going to do, let's listen to what tones mode does. You hear how it makes it kind of stuttery? Right? That doesn't sound great. Let's put it in texture mode. And again, the beginning of everything is kind of weird sounding, stuttery. There's repitch mode, which actually changes the pitch, but you hear the pitch is shifting around. The reason why that's happening is because all of these warp markers are adjusting the speed of that part of the audio. Now, these different warp markers here, this like section between the warp markers is called each segment. The segment, there's a segment, here's a segment, here's a segment. These segments are all different tempos actually. And if I click on each warp marker, we can see down here on the left, the segment BPM. You can see this one's 129.74, this one's 108, this one's 113, this one's 120. So every warp marker you have is going to have a different segment BPM. All right, if I got rid of all of these warp markers, now there's just this one here. It's 120.34, and this one over here is 120.34. But the second I add all these back in, oops, now we're going to see different ones. So if I play it like this, that warp mark, that repitch is not going to make any changes. It's just going to be low pitch, lower pitch, because it's like that's basically it's like 20 BPM slower pitch. But if I go back and I put these warp markers in, now listen to it. It's like got this weird pitch thing going on, and that's because these segments are changing their tempos. Now, the segment BPM is really important that you understand what it does, but you don't have to think about it all the time. You just have to know, okay, that's what it does. And sometimes you're going to want to change it by hand, but most of the time you're not going to change it by hand. Now we go down here to complex mode. That sounds really good. Complex Pro also sounds really good. I hate that they called it Complex and Complex Pro because it implies that Complex Pro is more professional than Complex, and a lot of people, they're like, oh, Complex Pro, it's better. It's not better, it's different. So you got to know when to use Complex and when to use Complex Pro, and here's how you know. Complex is really good for full songs. So if you're warping a full song, if you're doing like some DJing with Ableton Live and you've got a full song in there, then Complex is the one to use. Complex, this one right here, Complex. If you are doing stuff with vocals, then Complex Pro. Complex Pro is great for vocals. Complex is great for full songs because Complex Pro actually loses some of the high frequency fidelity and does weird stuff to the high frequencies that Complex does not do. So Complex Pro is not great for full songs. And it actually took me a while to recognize this because I was so stuck in my head that Complex Pro is just better because it's called Pro that I didn't really, I was like, I thought my hearing was doing weird stuff or something like that. But no, Complex is the way to go for songs. Complex Pro is the way to go for vocals. And we'll come back and talk about that in just a little bit here. But let's go back to Beats Mode. Beats Mode is really important that you understand that each of these little sections here is called a segment, and they're treated as individual samples. So what Ableton Live is doing right now is it's chopping up this beat loop into here's one sample, here's another 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 sample, and so on. So it's treating it as all these little individual samples. And when it's treating it as these individual samples, it now treats the audio inside of it as like it does different stuff to that audio. And how it does different stuff to the audio is right down here on the left-hand side. Now, just to comment about this real quick, Elastic Audio in Pro Tools acts the same way, but the way you kind of get to things in Pro Tools is a little bit hidden, whereas in Ableton Live it's out here in the front. And it wasn't until I started really understanding how Ableton Live deals with this stuff, and I went digging for it in Pro Tools to see if I could do the same changes in Pro Tools that I can do in Ableton Live, that I found it. And this is how I discover a lot of things, is that because I'm always going back and forth between Pro Tools, Logic, Ableton Live. And so what I'll do is I'll say like, oh, I wonder if Ableton Live can do the same thing that I can do in Pro Tools. So I'll start right-clicking on things or whatever, and I'll find, oh yeah, yes it can, or no it can't. And that's how I find all this new stuff. So I highly recommend, the moral to that story is I highly recommend that you click around on things, that you try to see how close these DAWs are together, because that will help you learn each one more deeply. So all this stuff right here is right here in your face, and you might wonder, what does this stuff mean? Well, preserve is what is telling it how Ableton Live is going to look at the information in here. So when it's in Transients mode, which is the default mode, Ableton Live is going to show us by each warp marker or each transient. So for example, if I have a transient right here, now Ableton Live is going to chop it up according to this transient marker. It's not according to the warp markers, it's actually according to the transients. But most of the time, when you're moving stuff around, the transients and the warp markers end up coinciding with each other quite often. Not all the time, but often they do. If I wanted to chop it up by different timing, then I could do it right down here. I can chop it up by the 16th notes, the 8th notes, quarter notes, half notes, 30-second notes. And depending on the audio material, maybe you want to do it like this. But we can also use this as a cool effect for long tones, which I'll show you at the end of stuff today. But for the most part, transients works the best. For beats, especially for actual beats, you don't want to use these other ones here. Most of the time, you're just going to use transients. Now, down here, this shows us what Ableton Live does with the internal of each transient. So, for example, right now, if we listen to this, you hear that there's like a little bit of sound between each one. If I slow it down even more, we're going to hear that sound more pronounced. Let me slow it down to 80 BPMs. Hear that between each one? All right, if I change this, I forget what they call it. What do they call it? The transient loop mode. Okay, whatever. It's a very random thing. Oh, John. What's up, John? How you doing? If I change this, listen to the sound. Here, I'll just change the sound. What this is doing is this is trying to loop the interior here in such a way that it gives it some filling. It's when you slow things down, because when you slow things down, you're stretching out that time between each segment, and so it's trying to fill it up, which is okay. But the more slower you make it for these beats, the more weird it's going to sound. Right? Especially since we are not at half the tempo, we're at 80. So for example, 120, half the tempo is 60. So if I put 60 in and I listen at 60, it actually sounds pretty cool. It's actually in tempo. You can hear it's actually in the right tempo there. But that's not what we want either. Let's go ahead and put this back to 80. That's slow enough. What we really want is we want there to be no filling at all, because a real bongo doesn't go brrr at the end. A bongo goes boop and it stops. So let's go ahead and put this in right here to no loop. Now let's listen to it. Very cool. Now you can hear at the end of each one, there's like a weird little click. I'm going to get rid of that click by putting a little envelope on each segment right here. There we go. And the more you make it down, there we go. The more cleaner it sounds. And I could throw this into my reverb. Now it sounds like a perfect bongo. Any speed I put this at is going to sound like a perfect bongo. Let's go ahead and hold on. I'm going to get rid of this one. There's like a transient here. Let's get rid of this one transient. There we go. That should clean up the beginning of that note. Perfect. Can even bring this down maybe a little bit more. Great. Okay, so you really want to balance between these. If you're going for a natural sound, you want to balance between these. The cool thing is, once I've got this set up, I could actually adjust my pitch down here to anything I want. I can do adjustments like this. Oh, this is, oh, I was going to say, I forgot what this is. Sorry, excuse me. But it's reverse it. I remembered right after I hit that. All right. So this is Beats Mode. Beats Mode is super, super cool. It's great for this kind of stuff. And this is what it looks like when I draw it out. You can see here, here's all my little individual segments. And then it just spaces them out when you go slower or faster. So if you don't have any kind of thing on top of this, it's going to sound great. If there's no overlapping audio, it's going to sound really fantastic. Well, so what do I mean by overlapping audio? Let's grab this sample here. Okay, I'm going to grab that sample there, and I'm going to, let's do this. Put that in the middle. There we go. Cool, that sounds better. All right. So I'm going to take these two sounds and I'm going to bounce those out real quick. Oops. There we go. Render. Tomato. No. What am I doing? I'm doing my master here. So we're gonna make an analysis file. I don't want that either. Okay, so we got this here, 24-bit. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go export. I'm gonna stick it into. Oh wait, let's make it. Hold on. Let's save this real quick. Let's call this one warping. A1. There we go. Boom, warping. Okay. So now we're gonna take these here and we're gonna bounce these out as a new audio file real quick. We're going to put it into this one. We're going to put it in here. Just right there is, we're going to call this bongo sim loop. There we go. Boom. There it is. Okay, cool. So we go over here into our current project, and there it is. I'm going to drag it down here. Okay, cool. So now we got this. Now let's listen to this one. Oh, wait. Oops. Hold on. One more thing I'm going to do. I'm going to put this back at its real tempo, because otherwise. Okay, cool. So let's do that again, one more time. Sorry. Yeah, we should be good there. Samples, recorded. Let's put it in the samples folder since we're here. Bongo sim loop. Cool. There we go. Boom. Put our samples folder. There we go. Okay, so that's our bongo sim loop. Boom. Okay, so now I got this. There it is. Great. Sounds fine. Sounds great. Now, I'm going to keep it into Beats Mode, and I'm going to actually apply it like I did with this one up here. so it sounds exactly the same. Let's make these both a little bit bigger. Make it so they fit on our screen. I'm going to go like this, make it so it stretches across. And what I want to do is I want to show you the difference between these. So they're basically the same, but this one has a cymbal smash. This one does not have a cymbal smash. I'm going to make it so the cymbal smash is just gone. And cool. Okay, put that kick drum back on. Let's actually keep the kick drum off for now. Okay, so we got this one here. Oh, I see what you're doing. Okay, this one here. Okay, and this one here. And this one here. Oh, I had that. Okay. Okay, so no cymbal and cymbal. Now, if I slow this way down to 80, I'm going to set both of these so their settings are exactly the same. So this one here is set for beats, transients, and no loop. This one down here is set for beats, transients, and no loop. Now let's listen to the difference between these, okay? So here's this one, the first one. It sounds great. Now let's listen to this one. Oh wait, I also got to, hold on, before I do that. This one's at 49. This one, let's put this also at 49. There we go, cool. Now, first one again, real quick. Cool. Sounds great. Let's listen to this one. And that one sounds weird, because we have the cymbal smash on there. So it's not going to sound the same, because now suddenly we've got the cymbal smash on here, and it's no longer individual pieces of audio. Now there's a long piece of audio that's going over the whole thing, and you can see it right here. Let me just move this up so we can see it more easily. See this? This cymbal is going over these individual hits here. Whereas if I go up like this, to this one, this doesn't have anything going over these individual hits. Okay? So now this cymbal one became polyphonic, and the top one is still monophonic. Monophonic meaning it's just one sound at a time. Remember that? We learned that from synthesizers, just one sound at a time. So we can see them in here, the same thing's happening. This one here doesn't have individual, you can see it comes down to 0 here. This one has the cymbal smash going on. So that's going to mean that we're going to hear the choppiness of the loop more pronounced in the one with the cymbal than the one that doesn't have the cymbal. Okay, let's listen one more time. This sounds perfect. Let me put on the... Okay, let's listen to this one. And it's going to sound even more pronounced if we turn this back up to 100. Put it back to 100 on both of them. There we go. So here, let's listen to this one again. Sounds good. You can hear the clicks between the notes, but that's not that big a deal. And this one here gets stopped by each one. Now, why is this happening? The reason why it's happening is because when we grab the samples, when we grab the segments and we spread them apart because we slowed it down, it's going to put gaps of silence between each one, because the segment actually doesn't change. And I hope this makes some kind of sense to y'all by hearing it and seeing it like this. The segment doesn't change between each one like this. It just stays the same internally, so we're going to hear all those gaps. So what's the whole point of this? The whole point is that you can use this beats mode for all sorts of stuff, not just drums, as long as the notes don't, as long as the sounds do not overlap. Okay, so it's not great for pianos that are going ba-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da, dee-da-da-dee-da-da-da. It's not good for that. It's not good for guitars that are going bring, dee-dee-dee-dee-ding, bring, dee-dee-dee-dee-ding. It's not good for that, because you're going to hear the gaps between the spaces if you slow it down. But it is good for a piano going bump, 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 bump. It's actually perfect for that. Let me show you what I mean. We're going to put this back to 120. Okay, let's put a piano in here. And piano, go over here to this one here. We'll do a find for contact. Contact Y. Here, audio units, because I can't use my VSTs. Let's grab a piano in here. There's my piano, Alicia's keys. Grab you, boom. Okay, so now I got this here. Let's go ahead and put some notes in. Piano. Let's just do C, deep clip. C major, C major scale is fine. Clock it to my scale. There we go. Okay, so we'll go over here to C3, C4. Let's do C4. Make scale. Okay, so now C major, like that. Yep, there we go. And bump, bump, bump. We'll make it eighth notes. Okay, cool. Let's make it quarter notes. That'll make it a little bit, die off a little bit better. Cool, we got that there. Let's duplicate this a couple times. 1, 2. Let's listen. F A C. Let's see, a G B D. Let's make this one to a G B D. Okay, cool. Yeah, so let's do this. Awesome. So we have that there. Let's go ahead and render this. Freeze track. Turn it into audio. Actually, hold on. Let's do this like that. There we go. And unfreeze this one. And then flatten this one. Cool. Okay, so I've got two versions of the same thing. One is MIDI and one is audio. And let's go ahead to this one and do a slightly different piano thing real quick. And let's go to, here, let's do this. Let's go bum. I'm going to use the same notes. And yeah. And I'm just going to make these, you know, a little bit something. So there's like different movement here. There we go. I have to delete you, make you longer like that. So there's different notes holding. This over. And make you like that. Here, move things around a little bit. And I'm doing this on purpose to grab these over here. Whoops. Okay, so let's listen to that right there. We'll just do 1 bar loop or 2 bar loops. Okay, cool. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. Let's go ahead. Okay, let's go ahead and freeze that one and turn that one into audio so we can see the differences. Whoops, wait. Crop it, there we go, boom. And so we can see the differences between these two different piano parts here. So we can see, well, let me grab this. I'm just gonna make them so they're shorter. There we go, cool. Okay, so we can see here, here's the piano melodic, and here's the piano rhythmic. Rhythmic. Okay, cool. Okay, there we go, and okay. And we can see in here we've got we've got these transients. Let me just put the transients in the right places because Ableton Live put them in weird places. And we're just gonna scroll over. Come on. Scrolling these around. Oh, it's just off my screen because I'm zoomed in. So I was like, why is it doing it like that? But it's okay. I'm gonna move these over. Good, good, good. Okay, cool. And you definitely want to fix these up a little bit. This is like one of the things that kind of is like bugs me about Ableton Live, that it's not better about discovering those. Okay, cool. So we got that. Now I'm going to slow this down. Let's start off by slowing down the rhythmic one here. And I'm going to put my warp mode over here so it's not going for those. The quantize shortcut, Command U. So we got this here. Transient set to this here. So now we got this. Now I'm going to slow it down. And as long as these are set to the right place, it's going to sound good, but you have to make sure they're set to the right place, which is kind of annoying, but most of these sound good now. There's like a weird one over here. Here we go. There we go. Okay, now everything is set. Right. Ah, I thought it was. There we go. Okay, so we got this. Now I can slow this down as much as I want, and it's going to sound good. There's no gaps, like there's no extra gaps. Put this up here. There we go. Okay, there's no extra gaps. But if I do the same thing to my melodic part here, okay, if I do the same thing with this one here, I slow it down, it's immediately, let me set all the settings to be the same settings. Okay, yeah, that's the only setting I changed. So now immediately, it's going to sound weird. Okay. Now, you might be saying, but Tony, that sounds pretty cool. And to be honest, I don't hate it, but it doesn't sound natural, is my point. Like if you're looking for a nice natural piano slowed down, this is not it anymore. So rhythmic mode, we're on the same instrument, but this one sounds great. Sounds very natural because there's no overlapping notes. Whereas this one here sounds weird because there are overlapping notes, right? And that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make here. And this is when you need to start going to other warp modes. Beats mode is the mode that you should probably always start with because it doesn't use much of your computer processor. We can see we're only using like 7% of our computer processor here. Right? It's only using 7% of our processor, and as you add stuff in, it's not going to get appreciably more. All right, so it's pretty cool. But if, for example, this rhythmic one here, if we want to make it so it sounds more natural and it doesn't have all those little gaps in it, then we start looking at other warp modes. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. The first one I'm going to show you is Complex and Complex Pro. Complex. Now, let's go ahead and solo this out. Sounds like this. Which sounds pretty darn good. Okay, you're going to notice that it sounds really, really good like this. Let me put a fade right here. There we go. And the reason why it sounds good is because complex sounds good. Let's put it in Complex Pro. Put that envelope up there. Sounds great, right? This piano is not super bright. There's not any cymbals or hi-hats in this piano, so it's going to sound really good. It's going to be a good sound here. But like I said, with instruments and things, it doesn't sound as good. Let's go down here like this with the envelope lower. You're going to hear the artifacts in here more. Okay. And more when we adjust like the formants and stuff like that. Put it back in complex. Sounds really good. Okay. If we go over here to some of these other warp modes, tones and textures. Sounds kind of warbly. Again, maybe that's a sound that you like. There's nothing wrong with it necessarily. It's got like an old warpy tape type of sound. This one does too. Kind of a chorusy sound, which I think sounds really cool, but it's not natural sounding. It sounds like it has an effect on it. So again, if you want it to sound natural, this is not the way you want to go. And then of course, if we use repitch, who thinks they know what's going to happen with repitch? When it's slowed down, it goes down in pitch. Now again, this one here, if we slow it down to 60, it's going to be actually, it's going to fit the pitch because now it's an octave down. There it is. And now there it is, an octave down. Again, this sounds dope. It's in a weird pitch, and especially if we put it like 80 or something like that, it's not going to be the right pitch. Now, there is math that you can do to figure out the tempo and how it affects the pitch and stuff like that. I don't know that math. I plug stuff into websites and things that would just show that to me. So I'm sure you can find a website that says speed it up by this pitch and it gives you speed it up by this amount of BPMs and it gives you this pitch differentiation, stuff like that. So I know there's stuff like that out there. So that's what these different warp modes kind of do. Let's just take a look at the notes here real quick, because really what you need to do is you need to go in there and you need to mess around with this stuff. Really the main thing to understand is how it's chopped up with the transients, and then that these warp modes are different. And then really what you need to do is you need to go in and mess around with the different warp modes with different types of sounds to see what you like. That's really the only thing you can do at this point. So just real quick, the warp modes here, tones and textures, these are for sustained sounds that don't have a lot of transients. They're not good for drums. They're great for pads. The pianos don't sound too bad, actually. They're really cool for special effects. I like those tones and textures for different special effects. Repitch, it's just like a record player. Slower equals a lower pitch, faster equals a higher pitch. There you go. And warp modes, Complex and Complex Pro. These are great for full songs, also good for repitching vocals. Complex is the one for full songs. Complex Pro is the one for vocals. Just keep in mind when you are doing all of these warping and stuff that the different modes do affect your CPU. So if we go over here, I'm not sure how much we're going to see it. Yeah, the answer is with this new M1 chip, we're not seeing any kind of shift at all, which is fantastic. That's great. Yeah, everything's just 6 and 7%, which is frankly unbelievable. So with the more modern computers, you don't have to worry as much about this CPU taxation here. The segment BPM tells you the tempo of each warp marker section. It's good for identifying the tempo of songs that you import into live for DJ sets. So if I go over here, I can see, if I click on this warp marker right here, I go down here to the lower left, and I can see, oh, okay, this BPM is 120. And there you go. Cool. What else we got going on here? Live audio files. Let's come back and talk about this stuff more tomorrow. So let's go ahead and take a break. Let's go ahead and stop the recording, rather.